Hey, Wasgod, what's up? So I thought I'd do a paintover and a crit for you, like before you've even submitted and stuff, just to get you back online with, I think, some fundamental stuff that we really need to pay attention to before we go forward, because I think you're starting to get a little bit caught up on. Sorry, let me just get rid of that. Yeah, I think you're starting to get a little bit caught up on details. You know, like these kind of areas. What is going on? Like these pink areas and little value adjustments here and there and stuff like that. And I just think let's keep thinking in big chunks. So I did a paint over here. All right, which you can see. Now it might look detailed, but it actually isn't. It's pretty rough. But I think it gets a sense of the scale and the perspective a little bit better. Well, it captures that a little bit better. Now, I want you to focus on... Well, let me just highlight a few things. First thing is value arrangement and depth. So, you know, your composition isn't bad, although you are getting this kind of, you know, kind of boring, undynamic kind of line across there. I mean, there are some bits that go up above, but basically it's kind of, you know, the composition is just doing that, which is fine. I think it works fine, but you'll see with the shapes that I've chosen, the composition kind of does this. Okay, so if you even just look at the difference between these red shapes, I mean, you can just feel. Okay, I've added a little bit in the sky as well to accentuate that, and there's a bit more of a ground plane to accentuate that. So if you look at the difference between these, you can just feel it being a bit more dynamic. So that's the first thing with composition tweaks. The next thing is value. So value, I'm trying to think, if I squint at my image, what is the overall value that blocks that I'm seeing? So let me just highlight a few of these. Okay, and there's a bit of this going on, then there's that, and there's that, and the stuff in the background. So I've actually separated out layers of depth by the value that they pick and by the value that they are. So with this area here, I actually, after I drew the shape, I actually darkened it down a little bit. And the other thing, so that it would pop out a bit more, but it would seem a little bit closer to us than this thing is. Same here, this section here is actually separated in value from this one overall. I mean, there may be some areas that aren't, but it's separated out. Okay, now I'm not saying you go and separate absolutely everything, because things will start to look very collagey. But, and you do have some separation in your values, but it doesn't quite hit the mark. There's no separation here. Here, you see it things kind of just floop around in this gray area, and there doesn't seem to be any depth, and that's because of your value. And also, we're using the grays. I mean, let's just, if you're gonna go, you're already in color, so, you know, let's just make it all color. That way you can actually sort of tell what's going on, rather than have some grays and some colored. A way that you can check, you can always check, I can't remember if you're using Krita, but you can always check value of your piece by adding, I mean, it's not 100% accurate, but you can add a saturation layer on top of it. Fill it with black, and that desaturates it, so you can switch that on and off just to see value. That's not perfectly accurate, but it's good enough to, so you can test your values if you're painting in color. So you paint in color, and then you test your values. So that's one thing I would suggest. The other thing, I guess, is depth layers. So depth layers, I'm trying to accentuate the depth by the rhythm. If you remember to the video that I posted a while ago, one of the ways of creating depth is rhythms of dark and light and counterchange. So if you're looking at this image, okay, we have dark, which is this section here, right? And then we have light, this section here. And we have dark, section here, and then we have light. And by light, I mean lighter, okay? And then actually this is going light again, but it's actually a rhythm of dark. Even though this is lighter than this here, it's still a change from this layer here. So it's that change of value that showcases the depth. So, you know, that's how I'm using those values. So if you look here, the reason these lines are here, it's because we've got, even though there's a whole value area here that's light, within it I've got dark, light, dark, you know, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark, light. And as I'm going into the distance and getting smaller, these get thinner and thinner, and that's what shows a perspective. Closer up, you got sort of bigger areas. These are just general guidelines. They're not rules. These can be broken, but you know, this is what helps to show depth. I use the sense of overlap. Okay, you've got a little bit of overlap in yours, but all the overlap in this gray area here is gone. It's missing. So I created that sense of overlap. This is overlapping all the stuff behind it. This is overlapping clearly all the stuff behind it. This is overlapping all that stuff. This is overlap. This is actually overlapping the castle. The castle is overlapping the sky. This whole foreground area is overlapping all the stuff behind it. The truck vehicle thing is overlapping the stuff in front of it. So I've tried to arrange these overlaps specifically to help drive the composition and the depth. So that's something I'd like you to think about, definitely. I added more depth by increasing the depth in the distance. So I actually made it so that I could see the horizon line. Your horizon line is missing. So this isn't bad. It can work for sure, and you know, it makes us appear closer to whatever it is. But again, I just did it just so to prove the point that the more that you show what's happening and overlap, and you know, this is just a suggestion of a mountain range or something, right? It's not even a clear thing, but it just, with the value, it suggests overlap. And I've added atmospheric perspective. Anytime I've tweaked the values, so if I've had a block like this over here, say this, or, well, no, let's pick the castle. Say I painted a bit, and now I want to tweak the values of it, just overall. I can select it, do a brightness filter contrast, and I'm pulling the wrong layer. Yeah. And then adjust it slightly. You don't have to do a lot, you know, and it is kind of doing it overall, but doing this, I can actually adjust the value and even the contrast. Bring it closer, further, or you know, or just suggest a different value arrangement. Maybe push it out a little bit, make the lighting a bit harsher. Right, so that's actually really quite a strong focal point. That probably works better. In fact, it does. So it's important to look at the overall, right? Don't get caught up in these little kind of fiddly details when your overall isn't working yet. So that's why I wanted you to not go into photo textures. So if you just keep going with this. Oh, I also added some stuff in the sky. Not a lot, because you're going for, I think I know what you're going for, but some suggestions of some depth in the sky only helps. A little bit of those wispy clouds, and they point towards the, what you call it, that's all just adding to the depth and composition. And a quick thing about shape language, I actually went to reference. I found these cool, like, shape ice castles, they call them, which I thought was really neat, as opposed to the spiky stuff. Sorry, that's not it. It's more here. And I just thought that is a really cool shape language, right? And if your ice castle is a spire, look, that's actually built into the structure, so that's kind of cool. Could be part of the ice castle. So I just thought, well, maybe this stuff in the foreground, all the natural stuff, is that ice castle-y kind of structure, right? It's rounded shapes, spires pointing down. It's more rounded, organic kind of shapes. And then the structure itself could be a little bit more angular. Maybe the spikes are pointing up instead of down. So there's a little bit of contrast between them, rather than just having everything spiky like it is here, because then there's a bit of noise. And look, the reed, like when you've started texturing up your foreground layers, but there's too much texture density. There's all this little, dotted stuff going on. You actually don't need a lot of that. We can add textural detail later, but that's actually breaking depth and is drawing a lot of focus, whereas look at this. You don't need a lot. You actually don't need a lot. So it's one of the things, I know it's hard, is to not focus on detail, but that's where we get tripped up a lot. If you just nail the overall value, the overall shape, make it work all within the hierarchy of the image, then everything will be easy to detail. I've definitely made sure that the ground plane is visible all throughout. Right? It's visible all the way through, just so that we're absolutely sure where that ground plane is, according to the perspective. Otherwise, things get, ambiguous. So yeah, I hope that helps. It might be enough to keep you going till next week, but post up your, maybe work on the suggestions. I'm going to post this image as well in the forum, so you can, even color pick and have a look at the value structure that's in this image and in the paintover, and then you can use that to inform your piece. And then, yeah, let's just keep going with it. Awesome. Great work, man.